Guys, the star of the 2 greatest horror films ever made, Blood Rage and Intruder. Give it up for Ted the Man Raimi. Woo!
All right.
He promised. I promised him.
Really bad. Wait a minute. All right.
I'm
there
sorry.
we go. No, we're good now.
Yeah, I promised him I wouldn't bring up Intruder or Blood Rage, but I did.
And then he
anyway,
just did.
So there we go.
What the heck's going on? How's everybody doing? All right. Good. Excellent. Is everybody buying autographs like mad? Guys like, yeah, can't pay my rent, but yeah, I got Greg Nicotero's autograph. I guess that's, I can't turn the light on with it, but okay. Speaking of which, raise your hand if you've gotten an autograph. Okay. The rest you're like, yeah, suckers, back doing that. And for those of you who had your hand up, please raise them up again. Put a hand down if you've spent most of your money here already that you have in your pocket. Hand down. Okay? For those who still have the hand up, do you have more than half? Okay? For those who've... One guy. Stand up, sir.
You mean like life savings or?
No, sorry, him, that guy. Stand up. Yeah, we want to know, with the half of the money that you have left, what do you plan to do with it?
Buy more shit.
Wouldn't we all? Yeah. So I love these conventions. I love them as a fan as well. And that's the great thing about these things. You will find actors who are just,
I wanted to get into it because it's popular. As soon as I'm done with all this crap, I'm going back to Lifetime movies,
or whatever, but, a lot of us here really love the genre. We got into it because of that. So I know you guys all love it too, So yeah, that. Anyway, welcome. Glad you're here. I mean, well, crap, we're all leaving in an hour, but glad you're here. I mean, it's the last day, but it's still pretty doggone fun, so it's kind of awesome. All right, sir, you go ahead and lead this fine
All
trip.
right, well, this is completely random, but what I love about this is that, Ted, you're like the king of the bit part in every single good horror movie there ever was, right? I mean,
Wow,
you always remember them because they're little but good, right? But who here woke up at 6 a.m. and watched Skinner for the first time?
Wow, you guys,
Just
that's
me?
a weird thing to do in the first thing in the morning. I'm actually kind of afraid. I'm glad there's a space between us.
Look where you are. Look at where you are. Okay. All right. But Skinner,
true.
hey, you got to be like the star of Skinner, Ricky Lake, and Tracy Lords.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, come on. That must have been pretty good, right?
It was. How many of you have seen Skinner? You know what we're talking about? Okay, enough of you freaks have seen it. All right. So that movie was one of, I'd say, like 3 larger scale pictures that were piggybacking off of Silence of the Lambs, right? So this was one of the 3 that got a major release, and it was a strange picture. It's super weird. It did moderate business, and then it went away. And I was like, phew, okay, that's done. I mean, I didn't dislike it. I was just, I didn't know what to do with it. It's a really weird movie directed by this Hungarian director named Ivan Nagy. And Ivan sounded like this when he directed. He would be like, I don't like. We do this again because you stink in the take, so we go do again. Like, he was like that. And he had directed a lot of other little movies that were really interesting and weird. And I think he directed the pilot of this, I think, early 80s mystery thriller TV show called The Hitchhiker. You might remember. It wasn't based on the movie. It was based more on this radio drama, American radio drama of the 1950s and 40s called Mysterious Traveler, which is the same idea. So kind of a spooky traveler travels with you and weird things happen to you. It's kind of cool. Anyway, that's Ivan. And when he liked to take, Ivan would go like this. Cool! He'd really wake up, It was like being directed by Dracula, basically. But the movie, anyway, it didn't do well. And then it just sort of sat around and went through some iterations. I think it got released some fourth-rate kind of really bad, like one of the worst transfers to DVD I've ever seen. I mean, it looked like a snuff film. It was so badly transferred over, and then it vanished, completely vanished. No one even knew where the negative was. So I was like, all right, I guess there's some things in your life you forget about, like, I don't know, a friend of yours that you couldn't stand, you'll never see again. You're like, good, I don't think about it. I mean, I like the movie, but it was like that. They just vanished. And then, out of the blue, I learned from my friend Jeremy Kasten, who cut the film. He's like, well, you're not going to believe this, but Severin Films, this was like 4 years ago, had me do a worldwide search for a print to look for the negative, right? These are, of course, filmmaking days, not digital. And I asked Jeremy, why? Like, why are they looking for that movie? It didn't even do that good business at the box office. And he's like, you don't know? I said, no, I don't know. Why? He goes, because it became a cult film. I go, what? That weird movie? And he goes, not only that, they're doing a 4K release, and they are doing a new box set of that and 2 other movies that company put out, and they're having a screening at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood, California, on Hollywood Boulevard. I was like, that's a good one, dude. He goes, no, you have to go out there for the premiere. I thought he was kidding, so I flew out to L.A., and I'm like, okay, I saw the movie on the banner, but I thought, there's going to be like 4 people here. Like, who is coming to this Silence of the Lambs knockoff movie that I made 25 years ago? It was packed. I got really lucky. So that's a weird-ass movie. And if you want to see a movie that's absolutely bizarre, and it is strange, go see that one.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I actually watched it was because we were out last night and someone asked me about, oh yeah, have you seen Skinner though? And I said, oh yeah, I've seen. No, wait a minute, I haven't seen that. I mixed that up with Shocker because Shocker's got Mitch Pileggi who plays Skinner in the X-Files, right? And you guys have seen Shocker, right? Right? And Ted is, of course.
That's a groaner. I call that one a groaner. Because like you're watching the movie, you're like, oh. You go, oh, that's what? What? But Mitch was great in it. I thought Pileggi was great in it.
Yeah, Mitch. Oh, I mean, but unrecognizable because I can remember watching it and being like, "Wait a minute, is that?"
Yeah, he was great.
Like it just, yeah, it's so different. Now that being said, I mean, you know, you've got a lot of experience with the other Raimi director, but that gave you some experience with Wes Craven, right? Another big horror legend.
Yeah, I worked with Wes.
And what was what was Wes like?
Wes Craven was, you know who Wes Craven is, I'm sure you guys, horror fans you are. Wes was a very atypical horror director. In fact, I don't know if there is a typical one. They're all over the place, you know. But Wes, if you didn't know who he was and you had to say, guess this person's profession, like some kind of old 1950s game, you'd say high school history teacher or community college history teacher. He would come onto set with a tweed jacket, elbow patches, loafers, plaid socks, a starched white or red plaid shirt. And Wes kind of talked like this. So, hey, how you doing, Ted? Okay, so let's see. So you go, oh, wow, I don't know if I studied for today's exam. That's what you're thinking. But no, he was behind that, facade was a very, very thoughtful and super smart and extraordinarily creative director. So, yeah, it was awesome.
By the way, does anyone find it really warm in this room? Yes, I know, and it makes me think. So how much sweat did you pour out of that Henrietta costume?
Oh, gross question, but all right. I'll answer. A lot. It was gross. I mean, I don't know. It was probably 100 degrees in the studio because we were shooting in Evil Dead 2 was shot in an abandoned high school in Wadesboro, North Carolina, a very, very underpopulated city, small city. And that high school got abandoned probably in the late 60s. There were so few people there. So it sat vacant for like almost 20 years. And then we came along and we went, well, we need a location. They went, I tell you, I got the perfect one for you. Oh, you're going to love this one. It's a whole high school. So we went, great. So then we took, the shop class became the makeup effects department. the teacher's, coffee break room was model department and all that. It went on, and we used the gym to build that, the cabin. So all the interiors of that cabin is shot in a gym. And it was blasting hot. It was also elevated. And in that costume, it was probably like, my God, it was probably 115 degrees in there, 120. And it was so hot they had to take a shop vac on backwards and blast it into which didn't really help. It was like blasting me with like more hot air. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea, but they did. But then I also had an oxygen tank, so I wouldn't pass out. So I'd breathe that like every maybe 30, 40 minutes or something. And I was blind because I had sclera lenses in. These days, if you want to have spooky eyes or if you wish to have different colored eyes, lenses, as you know, are much more advanced. And so you put those in and you can see perfectly well, but your eyes are a different color or perhaps they look completely opaque. But then you just had to be blind. So I'm blind, breathing out of an oxygen mask with a shop vac up my butt, trying not to pass out. That was pretty tough. But in the end, I loved it. I it's what I wanted, and I thought the movie turned out extremely well, personally. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, we can take questions now. Does
Any
anyone have
questions? Who has questions? Anybody? Nobody? Sir, you with all the money in your pocket.
Yes.
I was just wondering, did they have to use multiple Henrietta suits, or was it just the one suit for the entire production?
No, multiple. The suits themselves, the suits would last maybe 2 wears. They were latex foam rubber polyurethane suits, and so if you just put them on and, did that would be fine. Except I wasn't doing that. I'm going, doing all that kind of crap. And so they would wear out quite quickly. They'd patch them up on set. That was the worst part of it because they'd have to use a glue gun. So, and just my skin's right there. So they'd have to like kind of pull it back, glue it. And some of the glue would get on my arm. So I was like, when I moved my arm during the day, like at lunchtime to get that bottle, it'd be like, your skin comes off. So that was rough. So no, they wouldn't last that long. The makeup would have to be done daily. Obviously, can't keep that on. So yeah. Yes, awesome cosplay, by the way.
Thank you. What would you say is your favorite role that you've played?
I would say no. I mean, well, before 2 years ago, I would say any movie that paid me quickly. Because I like keeping the lights on, like anybody else. But since I have done The Quarry for Supermassive Games, the mocap game I did, that's motion capture, of course, that now takes as my favorite thing I've ever done. Because it was kind of the perfect storm of, I had an incredible cast that pushed me, we pushed each other in great ways, artistically. I had a great director. I had an A+ script. And then the effects team, after the game was done, were just some of the most talented people in the whole world putting it together. Now, that isn't necessarily a recipe for success, but it does give you the option, with luck sprinkled on, to have it. And that did. So that was really that was the best, I'd say, experience, And to show you that isn't true, so, like, here's an example. Okay. This happens all the time in Hollywood. So, okay. Everybody know who Michael Crichton is? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Michael Crichton. Everybody know who Laszlo Kovacs is? So Laszlo Kovacs is one of the greatest directors of photography in the world. So the greatest writer, with one of the greatest photographer, with some of the greatest actors in the world, and then they made the movie Congo. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be great. You've seen 1,000 examples of 1,000,000 stars, great directors, and you go, what happened? That can happen too. Who else? Anybody have a question? Yes?
I actually had a question regarding The Quarry. How did
Yeah.
the transition from film to the video game industry go for you? As well as there's a specific actor in The Quarry. I don't even remember his character's name, but now he's doing films like Dungeons and Dragons, and I saw the TV Glow. How do you see, what do you think of that? Like that you both came from this, not came from this one, but you are seeing him go to these big movies now that people are loving. So what do you think of that?
Oh, well, okay. Those are two really good questions. Those are great. I'd say to your first question regarding what was it like making the transition from film to mocap, it wasn't a difficult transition. It was very freeing. I suppose it might have been difficult if I hadn't started in theater because doing a motion capture game is very much like making a movie, but there are, though it seems antithetical to what I'm about to tell you, there are no dollies, there's no grips, gaffers, camera people, there's no prop department, there's no production assistants, there's no makeup, there's no costume department, nothing. There's just you in a black suit with a bunch of dots on your face, and a camera. So it's weird. The camera comes later. First, you're capturing everything within the environment of the computer, and then that's all added according to what the director wants. But so that was weird. That's very not non-film, but it really felt like I was rehearsing a play. It was like I was rehearsing a New York black box theater play, or maybe a Toronto black box theater, whichever, same thing. Where like you don't have it's almost like you didn't have the budget for anything, so you have just a fold out chair and that's your set, and it's very freeing. And so that's, I think, why I think generally the acting from all of us was elevated, because we kind of felt you couldn't mess up. It just felt like a rehearsal. That's that. So that wasn't too bad. In answer to your second question, the actor I believe you're talking about is Justice Smith. And Justice, fine actor he is. He was already doing big movies before that.
Okay.
And though it may appear, maybe you're first aware of him in the Quarry, but he was already doing like HBO movies and Cinemax and Netflix movies and stuff. So I think that was his first major feature, Dungeons and Dragons, which had already been shot by the time we had done that. Skylar Gisondo, who played Max, he just had what was it called? Not Licorice Pizza. Yeah, Licorice Pizza came out. And so we'd all been sort of film veterans who kind of went. But Dave Arquette as well, been in a million movies, too. But it did help, and though you were right, it did give us a platform from which to even launch a little further. So yeah, it's nice. Anybody else? Yes, sir. You with half the money in your pocket.
You played like a multitude of characters. Do you have a standardized process in learning a character, or do you vary your approach when you try to learn a role?
What a great question that is, too. Boy, you guys are awesome. You guys are great. I'm not bagging on anybody, the audiences, but you guys are great. Sometimes, which is all fine, frequently the questions are, wasn't it so cool when you, I'm like, I guess, yeah, but
It's okay.
it's fine. I get it, but, I start in multiple different ways. So I will try to latch onto one hook within the script that I read. And what I mean by that is I'll find a character flaw, or it can be anything, something that the writer mentions that he wears, a place that character lives, a thing that the character does. And it'll build in my mind as an imaginative story, like you're creating a D&D board, okay? It starts from one thing. So, for example, you guys play D&D? Yeah, everybody. Me too. I love the game. So, for those who don't know the game, it's an imaginative game where a board is drawn and you're given a character and you build that character from scratch. So it's very much like building an actor from scratch. And it's done the same way. So, in answer to your question, I'll frequently start, it says he's wearing a black sweater and black pants and black shoes, okay? That's all it says. And now the writer may have just meant it that I just want this movie to look cool and everyone wears black. He might not have anything in mind, but I'll take it. I'll go from there and I'll say, maybe he wants to remain invisible. Maybe he doesn't want to be seen. So I'll start there. Now, how would somebody who I see he's got no money, so he's not rich, why would somebody that's poor want to be invisible? And then you have to take a look at the script is. And start there. And that'll determine how he walks, how he acts. He wants to be shy probably and not seen, but he clearly there's a reason why the writer wrote this story, so he's got something like that. If it says he has a limp or something pronounced limp, the writer may have only meant it that he was in an accident earlier and has to make sense. But that affects a person greatly and throughout their lives to have a physical difficulty like that. So that's kind of how it is. It just depends. But I'll start with little and I'll build up big like that. Yes, sir.
So, kind of a two-parter. Was it generally easier to be Henrietta again in Ash vs. Evil Dead? And were you involved with Evil Dead Rise at all?
No, it was just as crappy and difficult. It was not any easier. They kept saying it was to make me do it. They really wanted me to do it. It'll be so much easier. It's 40 years later. You think we haven't advanced the technology in 40 years? I don't see it, but sure we have. And so I got into that suit. I went, nope, it's just like it was. It's no different. So that was pretty challenging. I'm sorry, your second part of your question, please.
Were you involved with the new movie Evil Dead Rise?
No, wasn't involved with the Evil Dead Rise, but I do think Gabrielle Eccles is a great actress, and I think she's going to be a big star. So she was great in that movie, just terrific, and I wish her the best. I think she's going to be great. But good movie? No, wasn't in it. Yes. Anybody else? Yes, all the way in the back. Yes.
A lot of really interesting creatives. What was it like to work with David Lynch on Twin Peaks and Jonan Vasquez on Invasion?
I'm sorry, what was the last part of your question? I didn't hear.
What was it like to work with David Lynch on Twin Peaks and Jonan Vasquez on Invasion?
Oh, I forgot about Jonan Vasquez. I haven't seen that guy in years. Well, to answer to your first part, it was great working with David Lynch. You know, David is he'd come to set sometimes. He no, I mean that seriously. He wasn't on set all the time. He had like 19,000 projects. You know, he would come and go. He's a producer. He's not, a star, and he rarely directed them. But David is very disconcerting, not because he's weird, but because he looks like somebody's dad walked onto set. This is I think I've shot in Canada several times. There's a different vibe. I think it's, generally speaking, Canada is a less pretentious set environment. There certainly are some, jerks here too. They're everywhere. But I mean, there seems to be more on American sets, people who want to peacock kind of and show you who they are. And so a guy walking onto set who isn't wearing in those days, back in the early 90s, producers wore Armani, all of them, and they had their hair, they looked like Wall Street guys, they had shiny shoes and Armani, and they had little, Beamer Corvettes and all that, They don't anymore, but that was how people were then. And then this dad walks onto set. He's got like corduroy pants that are kind of dirty a little bit. And these dad sneakers, and he's wearing those white dad sneakers, he's got those. They're mom sneakers, actually, I guess, technically. And he's got hair's all messed up. He's like eating tuna fish sandwiches and drinking milkshakes. And I go, I thought when I saw him, I go, there must be some kid about to be on set. Because he can't be, have an underage actor and not have parental supervision. But it's David Lynch. I'm like, that is David Lynch? That's the guy that directed Elephant Man? I can't believe it. I was like, I expected so much different. And remember, of course, it would seem odd that I wouldn't know what he looked like, but remember, these are long before pre-internet days. And if you wanted to know what a director looked like, you had to pick up specifically a director's magazine or be an avid reader of, say, The Hollywood Reporter, where his picture might be printed once every half a year. So people didn't know what they looked like in those days. You sort of have to guess. So that's the first part. And Jonan Vasquez, incidentally, for those who don't know, had me voice a character in his cartoon. He called me up, and I didn't know who he was. First, he goes, is this Ted Raimi? I said, yeah. Well, listen, I'm making a new show for Cartoon Network, and I love you, and I want you to be in it. Who is this? And how did you get my number? And I'm sorry, like, I don't know how he did it, but he called me directly. And I went to meet him because he was so goofy. And I was just fascinated. And he was this brilliant kid who made this TV show called Invader Zim for Cartoon Network, and it wound up being like a big hit, but I thought it was going nowhere. I'm like, who wants to see some stupid cartoon about a little monster and alien that is like, he wasn't a nice character. I'm like, kids aren't going to like this. This like alien's a monster. You're like, it's horrible. Like he's a cheater and he's lazy. I'm like, who wants to see this? But I want to be a big hit show. So I didn't think much of it at the time when I was recording it, and then I saw the pilot episode and I'm like, oh, I get it. Now I got it. So it took a minute to sort of see it. Because when you read the script, it just looks like, how can a 9-year-old or even a 20-year-old find this good? But it was awesome. I totally misread that one. Yes, next question. Yes.
With so many remakes happening lately, is there anything that you would like to see be remade and or be a part of?
No. No, and I don't mean, I'm not trying to be flippant or anything, because that's a really good question. The reason I'm saying no is because remakes are done generally only for two reasons. The first is, by far the most common, is the studio owns the property already and the movie was already a hit. You don't have to hire a new conceptual artist. You don't have to guess if the audience is going to like it or not. You don't need to do preview screenings to figure out if the ending's going to work. It worked. The merchandise is selling and has been selling for 10 to 15 years. It's a hit. That's number one. And that's good. I'm all for making money's great. Nothing against it. But artistically, it's going to likely be quite dull. The second reason I don't like it is because filmmakers, usually older ones, say, this really inspired me. I loved it as a kid, and I want a new generation to see it. Okay, but you're telling it from your point of view from being a kid, and nobody cares. Kids don't care. Why would you? I mean, it might be interesting in a historical sense. Be like, look, if any of us, being, well, the age younger people you are, some old geezer, 75, goes, I'm going to make a movie about, I'm going to remake Clam Bake. Clam Bake with Elvis meant something to me. You go, cool. Yeah, go on with your bad self. Like, I'm sure that would be awesome. I mean, I'm giving you an absurd example, but that's kind of the deal, So, what do? Nothing, I mean, it's one thing, it happens as you get older. You, as an artist, you want to show people what made you you. Musicians do it all the time. Like soul singers will do old, Motown, new ones because it just inspired them, right? Rockers will do a Buddy Holly song because like cool, that's like old school rock, inspired me. But in the end, it's usually just someone going, this meant a lot to me, and it's sweet, but you're just like the boring old grandpa at the party that nobody wants to talk to. That's kind of how it goes. Who else has a question? Excellent question, though.
What about Bernard Rose? What was he like?
Oh,
Candyman.
Oh, yeah. Have you guys seen the movie Candyman, the original? Okay, awesome. Bernard, or as he said, Bernard, English guy, was great. He was a great director. Still is a great director. Bernard, well, there's two kinds of directors, in my opinion. Every actor will, if you ask them to separate directors into two categories, will give you many different answers. Some will give you, say, there's directors that let you go to your trailer for an hour and directors that don't. And some will go, there's directors that give you bigger trailers and some that give you crappy trailers. And other directors will go, directors were super cool offset and super cool onset. All legitimate. My categorization is those who generally fall into these two, those who love working with actors and despise their crew, and those who despise actors and love their crew. Now, it isn't always true. Many despise both. No, I'm kidding. There are, of course, variants a million, but they kind of one gentle way or another. Bernard was one. He did not hate his crew at all, but he was rather neutral generally to his crew. He didn't lavish them with praise and stuff like that. But he was really into his actors, and which was nice. It was a nice change, you know. Directors are generally technical people, right? Because let's say we're all making a movie and you're all actors and say I'm the director. Okay. Well, I have all these people to deal with. Oh my God. You're like, I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like this. You know, should we do this? I got a great idea. You guys drive me crazy. Oh, look, we have second unit of this bottle to shoot. That sounds good. Bye while I'm shooting that, right? So it's better to, actors are hard to deal with, you know? We complain, we have ideas, we want to add to things, we might not like how a scene's going, so we can be a pain in the ass to some people, you know? And those people, and I understand that, you know, and those directors tend to not enjoy working with actors and they like the technical aspects of filmmaking. But Bernard wasn't. Bernard loved his actors, and Bernard would do this. He's like a little kid. He was a very soft-spoken Englishman, and he talked like this much of the time. And Bernard sort of went, that's how he would say it. He would, Bernard, did you like that? Like that, you know. And when he didn't like it, he would go, no. He was a very soft-spoken. But when he liked something, but take went well, Bernard would go like this. Like that. And we would all stop and go like this. I mean, he was like a little kid, and he was so enthusiastic. Yes, this is the guy that directed Candyman. That's him. And it was lovely. It was such a delight. And you knew when he did that, man, you did great. You know, and so that was Bernard. And I think that movie turned out great. I was very proud of it. I have a very small part in it, but I loved working with Mariana Elliott was the girl's name. Great actress. She only did a few other movies after, and then she quit the business, which was unfortunate. She's very talented. But the most incredible thing about that movie is he got one of the very, very few film compositions from the great Philip Glass. And Philip Glass, I think, basically despises the movie industry or is neutral at it at best, but Bernard's a great talker and talked Philip Glass into composing. I don't know what, he's Koyaanisqatsi, I believe, too, right? That and then maybe two other movies, maybe. He's got, 1,000 hours of compositions, but I think he's not into movies, So that was pretty cool. That long-winded answer aside, there you go. Yes, anybody else? Sir?
What do you think about the Evil Dead musical?
The Evil Dead musical?
Did your brother and you see it, or did you ever see it?
I saw it once.
Yeah, because I was seeing it last week. I thought it was pretty funny.
I really enjoyed it. I thought the Evil Dead musical was very clever. I laughed a lot. They really expanded on the B aspect of the movie, and they made songs out of it. One of which, I thought was so shocking and hilarious. I felt bad about laughing. The song called "What a Dumb Bitch." I was like, "That's a song. That's called that title." Okay, but it was really funny. It was great self-referential humor. They knew. I think it couldn't be done. It was so very clever because it's a take. It's a meta on a meta, if that makes any sense. So, of course, they're riffing on the movie, which is one thing, but then they're also riffing on themselves doing the riff on the movie. So the play can't be really accomplished effectively, I think, unless that happens. So it's very clever. I enjoyed it very much. Yes, sir.
Going off of that question, just popped into my head. Did you ever end up seeing Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark?
Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark? No. Did you?
No, I didn't, fortunately.
Oh. Anybody see that play?
I know it was heavily
Or-
inspired by your brother's series, so.
Oh, I don't know. I guess. I don't know. I didn't see it. I mean, I just read. I was like, oh, that's cool. They're doing an action musical Broadway show about Spider-Man. I go, man, that sounds kind of crazy. How are they going to do all that? And then the first weekend, actor who plays Spider-Man breaks neck on Broadway. I'm like, I guess they didn't do it. Not at all. Yes. Good. Oh, sorry, buddy. You can pictures. Well, what the hell? You already took them.
How did you feel the way Joxer ended in the Xena Hercules TV?
How did I feel he ended? What do you mean?
Do you think he, the way they killed him off and everything, do you think the character got a good ending, or do you think they should have done more with it?
Oh, I didn't care. I was glad it was over. I've been on that damn show for 6 years. I was like, good, I get to go back to America. I mean, I loved the show. I mean, I love my cast. I thought Lucy and Renee were great, but I mean, how many times can you go blah, blah, blah? Like for 6 years, you're like, I think this joke's played out already, Well, it was fine, good. Who else has a question? Yes, sir.
Do you have any fond memories from the set of Xena?
No. No, I'm kidding. Of course I do. Yes, yes, I've got fond memories. I liked working with Lucy and Renee the best. They were just phenomenal actors. They were very highly intelligent and skilled ladies. That show was about them. I mean, I enjoyed being on it. I think all of us guest stars did, but they're the stars of that show. That's what the audience wanted to see. And every time we would go off of that course during 6 years, the audience would get pissed. Like whatever, like Lucy was like, look, I need 1 week off out of these 6 years. Get me out of here. So she's like, she wanted to be with her kids or whatever. So we're like, yeah, get out of here. So she'd go, and then, we'd make some episode without her. Where whatever, like I would inhabit Xena's body or something, some crazy. Makes perfect sense, right? And then we'd get letters, in those days you got letters, pre-internet, You suck! What is this going? This is the worst effing show I've ever seen. Go F yourself, your stupid joxers and all, they were just, it's like, okay. So we made sure to put Lucy front and center. She was great.
So you don't think there'll ever be a Joxer the Mighty series?
No. Yes, sir.
Why do you think seaQuest DSV was such a disaster?
Wow, you get right to the point. Shit.
We know it wasn't.
Since you suck, let me ask you something. Might be a little sensitive.
Why did it suck so bad?
Actually, I didn't think it sucked. I actually liked that show. I had a good time making it. We were a top 10 show all 3 seasons. We were the number 1 show for 1 season. Then we went down to like 5, and then we're like 8. Which isn't saying much because there were only 5 shows. No, I'm kidding. But that show, I think it was a classic example in the 3rd and the 2nd season of too many cooks, too small a kitchen. That's it. We had just too many producers. Everybody wanted a hand in it. They heard, they heard Steven Spielberg, Universal Pictures, Roy Scheider, Irwin Kershner. Irwin Kershner. You know who Irwin Kershner is? Directed Empire Strikes Back. Irwin directed a couple of our episodes. So all these directors all these producers went, "Aroo!" Like they heard raw meat. They smelled raw meat. They're like, "Ah!" They all dived on the show. They went, "I want a part. I want a part. I want a piece. I want a piece. I think it should be this. I think it should be this." And they, you're baking a birthday cake with, pork in it, and it's not going to turn out very well. And so that was challenging. But by the 3rd season, we had some tough producers that kicked a lot of the, less useful elements out of the production room, and so we had a more unified look. And yeah, it was gorgeous, and I loved working. And you know who I loved working with the most? Just about Michael Ironside. Michael Ironside from Toronto, Canada. And Michael was awesome because Michael is one of the few, actually he's one of only 2 Canadian actors I have ever worked with who never bothered shedding his Canadian accent. And it made it very interesting. The other is Donald Sutherland. And he's like, and as like a maritime guy, it's like painful. So, Ted, okay, so, hey, I'm grew up in New York City, eh? Like, did ya? Oh, maybe I didn't know there was one in Nova Scotia, but okay, that's interesting. And then Michael was just He kind of growled a lot of his lines a lot, so I don't think people noticed, or he didn't care. It was awesome, you know. I remember one time we had a scene. It was a big scene where he and I were fighting on the bridge, and I was screwing up, and he was really, he was like a tough commander, and he was like, get your act together, O'Neill. And I went, Captain, I'm sorry, and he goes, don't tell me sorry. And no one said anything. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, why couldn't he have that? Anyway, I thought that was cool. He was great. And, of course, it's been long enough that in Hollywood it took the usual course of, one guy burned to death, another guy died of old age, and a third one killed himself. That's just happens to everybody, and that happened to our show, too, over the years, And so we had a seaQuest reunion. We're all friends. It's the weirdest thing. Like, on shows, when you leave a long-running show, you usually like, okay, we'll all talk soon. You eat lunch, breakfast, and dinner with someone for 6 years. It's like, they're awesome, but, you got your own lives. And that show, we get together every year. So every member of that cast, we got to get together. We just got together like a couple months ago. It was awesome. Yep. So, anyone else? Yes?
You mentioned that your experience in theater helped you working on the Quarry.
Yes.
Are there any stage productions, plays, musicals that you'd enjoy the opportunity to be a part of in the future? Like any roles that you just feel really passionate about, you'd love the opportunity to do?
Oh, like film roles or theatrical roles? Oh, theatrical. Oh, my God. There's so many plays I would love to do that I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to. But they're ones that I have read that I would just love to be a part of, that I mean, when you get cast in a great play that isn't Broadway, or that isn't a Torontonian play or Los Angeles production, a huge money-making one that is pop culture based with big stars. If you get something like that, you're really good. Like, you've worked for it. And I may have more of a name than many of these theater actors. But when it comes to, like, what's equivalent of off-Broadway, you just have to be great at theater. They don't care what your name is. You just have to be great. And if I can get into one of those doggone things, man, I think that's like half of my goal dreams as an actor, to do something like that. What I would like, answer to your question, is any David Mamet play I would love to do. I like all of them, even the ones that are crappy. I think are generally heads and shoulders above most plays today. Now, I know that's like an old guy, theatrical writer, and there are many new ones, and I've read new ones too, and I like a lot of new ones as well. But if you're asking me the question of who I want to do the most, I'd love to do a Mamet play. That's what I'd like to do. So, whatever, Oleana maybe, or that's probably the one I'd like to do. I think that one is just incredible, or any of them. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Your career is just so wild, like all over the place with the characters.
Pretty bananas, yeah.
But I'm just wondering, is there ever a role that you felt uncomfortable taking on, or a role that you wouldn't take on?
I'm uncomfortable with all of them. There isn't one where I'm like, this'll be. No, I sweat and panic and worry for weeks and sometimes months going over the script. It's never easy, and so yeah, they're all challenging, But if they weren't, I don't think they'd be worth anything. I have a good friend who tells me this quote, and I think about it a lot, and he's right. Easy to make, hard to watch. It's so true. I mean, if you ever watch DVD extra sections, okay, of any movie that sucked, you'll inevitably, when they interview the actors, go, I don't understand why it was so bad. We were loving it. We had the greatest time making it. Right. You're laughing your way all through the takes, enjoying yourselves, wondering, then no one thinking this thing's going to make $1 million, and it sucked because it takes such concentration. It's just hard, And I'm terribly sorry. What was the second part of your question, please?
I think
That's
that
it.
was it.
Yeah,
Well,
it's just if
I wouldn't take. Not that I can think of. Offhand. I mean, if you maybe, I'm sure there's probably porn I would avoid, but
Some of it. We have time for
just one more, I guess.
well, two more, but one of them is mine. Because if I don't ask this question, I'm
greedy.
gonna blow up. Yeah, I just have to ask you. I have to ask you about Blood Rage. So I never heard about this movie until one day, and now it's the Thanksgiving movie of choice. So where did that come from? And you're a condom salesman in it. It's not even a question.
No, it's not. And thank you for bringing that one up. So Blood Rage happened. I was 17 years old. I had moved from Detroit, Michigan to New York City. I was living in an unheated split-level apartment on 13th and 3rd Avenue, trying to get work as an actor. And it wasn't really going that good. It was winter. All my friends were at Michigan State University partying, drinking beer, and meeting girls. And I was just literally freezing in the shittiest New York roach-filled apartment you can imagine. And remember, this isn't New York now. This is New York of 1983. Did you guys see Taxi Driver? Yeah, well, this was only 4 years after that was shot. So it looked like that. There were like pimps and hookers, and everywhere you walked, there was like crunchy sounds. It wasn't roaches, they were crack vials. Everybody was smoking crack. That was like the drug of choice. Crack, 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 crack.
So it was Hamilton.
Yeah. Hamilton, right. So I quit the business at that point. I'm like, well, acting sucks. This is not fun, almost mugged. And it was like, this is awful. I don't want this life. So I was going to come home. I bought a ticket to go home. I had a college set up. I was like, great. And the ticket, in those days, you had to call a travel agent. You couldn't just go online. There was no computers. So you had to call online. And you call online, like, hey, I want a ticket for this. Okay, it leaves in a week. Okay, fine. I had 7 days before my flight left. And waiting, just killing time, not doing anything. I do remember also during that time I was really broke, and I would save pennies because all I could afford were potatoes and Cheerios. That's it. And that was getting really tiresome. And I saved my pennies, and after like 3 weeks, I had 100 pennies. And the reason that's important is because across the street, there was a pizza place that had dollar slices. So excited not to have to eat Cheerios, I brought these 100 pennies across the street. It was a really long line. It was a really popular New York pizza joint. And he goes, okay, that'll be $1. And I go, shh. Everybody behind me's pissed. He counting them out. Finally get my slice, bring it to the corner of 13th and 3rd right in front of my apartment. Pizza slides off, lands on the pavement. And I'm like, great. Another reason number 975 to leave the city. So a day before I'm supposed to leave, I get a phone call from this production company. Hey, that audition you did, which one? The one you did for that horror movie? Well, you got it. So it's with Louise Lasser. It's a really low budget film. It's a real movie. It's Screen Actors Guild. You want it? I went, yeah. So I canceled my ticket, stayed in New York City, and that was it. Worst decision ever made. Should have gotten on that plane, man. How different my life would have been. So, yes.
Right.
And is that it?
We're getting the hook
Yes.
now here, but
We're getting the what down here?
we're getting the hook.
Yeah,
But
the
hey,
hook. The hook. So I will say then goodbye, folks, and thank you for having me here.
Put it together.
It has been grand. Thank you.